Hi, I'm Daniel Butler. Welcome to another edition of America's Dumbest Criminals.
Coming up on America's Dumbest Criminals. A soggy suspect leaves a trickling trail for the cops. A shifty shopper checks out with more than his receipt. A casual crook makes a fashion faux pas. A man shoots mental blanks.
What the were you thinking?
All this and more on this week's episode of America's Dumbest Criminals. Here's your host, Daniel Butler.
Any professional wrestler knows that you always size up your opponent before you try to take him down. However, as this surveillance footage shows, this dumb criminal figured that his small-sized component would be an easy match. He was wrong. Get ready to bumble! Our casual culprit came out of the ring with a classic reach around to the register to open the cash door. However, our resilient register resisted nicely. Then the frantic felon countered with a full body hug and attempted to take our digital dynamo down. But the register kept its cord planted firmly behind the counter and even tossed off a few high-voltage bursts, causing our stunned stooge to release it to the ground, where he quickly grabbed some loose change and fled the ring. The register came out victorious and, with the help of his surveillance sister high in the corner, was able to help police nab the nitwit. Maybe there really is such a thing as honor among thieves. If so, someone should tell these next yahoos to make sure they're dealing with real thieves before they let their guard down. Two undercover narcotics officers were working in their Texas town when a call came in that two auto theft suspects had escaped on foot in their area. Spotting the larcenous duo, the officers acted fast.
Hey man, check it out. You guys live around here?
What?
You guys live around here?
Nah, we live on the other side of town.
Hey, come on, man, because there's cops all around the place. We just stole this car, you know? We got
Yeah, we just stole our own car down the street.
Hey, man, I hear some sirens. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, hey, cool. Can we dump it off at your guys' house?
Let's go.
All right, cool. Hold on just a second, man. Hold on.
Isn't it great to see crooks working together to get a head? They walked right into the long arms of the law, who quickly made the collar on this dynamic duo. San Diego patrolman Harold Johns has a great story which shows that everyone makes mistakes. But dumb criminals just seem to make them bigger and a lot more frequently than the rest of us.
We lost a prisoner one night. It happens, you know, they escape. I mean, we're not perfect. The guy had the handcuffs behind him and somehow slipped him around to the front and made a break for it. He was wise enough not to go home because he knew we were going to be there, and we were. But he wasn't smart enough to find a better place. He went to a bar, a very busy bar, a bar that we used to hang out in, all right? And the owners, the bartenders, the waitresses, everybody knew us. Now, not only did this genius not go to the bar and do it right, one would have expected him to go to a back table somewhere and sit where it's quiet, get a drink, calm his nerves, figure out his game plan. He went right up, sat down in the middle of the bar, middle of a crowded bar. About 45 minutes after we lost the guy, we get a phone call. It's the bartender. He says, "You guys missing a prisoner?" "Well, why?" He said, "I got this guy sitting at the bar who's really strange." He said, "He's going through some gymnastics to drink his beer." He says, "Where one hand goes, the other hand goes right behind it." He said, they just kind of look together. He says, "The guy's got to kind of inch his way to get the bar, get the drink, and kind of bend over and just kind of slurp out of the glass." He says, "Maybe you guys ought to come out here." I said, "Yeah, we'll be out."
Going to the laundromat is one of those trips that nobody likes to make, except for dumb criminals. They see it as a 24-hour, all-you-can-wear buffet. Luckily, this particular bleach bandit in St. Helena, California, was caught wet-handed. Shortly after responding to a theft report at a local self-service laundromat, officers were able to locate a suspect matching the description of the guy seen stealing clothes out of one of the washers. The officers questioned the drip, who denied having stolen anything, even though his pants were so wet that water was collecting around his feet. He was soon identified and hung out to dry in the local jail.
Hassle, guys. Told you I was just swimming.
Here's the story of a carjacker who personally pointed the police in his direction. In National City, California, a guy tried to make a family get out of their van, but as he was about to jump in, the angry driver slammed the door on him. He ran off, and it wasn't until police showed up that they realized that the thief was certainly missing something.
Get out and tell me this news. It's horrible. Unbelievable. Oh, my God.
The police contacted local emergency rooms and ended up locating their man, who had told the hospital that he got his hand caught in a motorcycle chain. The suspect immediately confirmed that it was his finger, until they told him that he was under arrest.
No.
Doctors pleaded with him to change his mind so that they could reattach the finger, but the man refused, thinking that they couldn't pin the crime on him if he didn't take his finger back. However, he seemed to forget that the family could still point him out in a lineup, which they did a short while later.
Go back to the couch and assume the position.
I'm Daniel Butler, and this is the marvelous and magnificent lightly salted Beaumont bacon.
Ready to highlight the underachievers of the underworld, like this thief who hoped to make a smooth entrance through the roof of a drugstore in Hagerstown, Maryland. He intended to lower himself with a rope, but did not want to injure his hands. So he coated the rope with Vaseline.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Downhill. Needless to say, his descent was more rapid than he expected, and he hit the shelving with such a force he was left incapacitated due to the injuries to his back and legs.
Ouch.
The police found him shortly afterwards, moaning and groaning and surrounded by all kinds of products from the shelves.
Yeah, it's too bad he didn't land amongst the painkillers, you know? I've got a story about making contact with an inanimate object, too.
Was it flying?
No, but I bet he was. Narcotics agents driving an unmarked van in Florida were approached by a man offering rocks of cocaine. The suspect jumped on the van's running boards, popped his head inside the van, and told the officers to drive around the block, by which time he'd have the cocaine for them. He jumped off the running boards, took about 2 steps, and ran head-on into a stop sign, knocking himself out.
I just love Grace under pressure.
Don't you? The officers gave the suspect some time to compose himself and returned a little while later when he greeted them with a baggie of cocaine in one hand and an ice pack pressed to his head in the other.
I hope he didn't get those two confused and try to suck up a cube in his nose.
Yeah.
And carted him off to jail empty-handed, I hope.
Yeah, and empty-headed. And once again, it's time for this week's Vidiot of the Week. Every year, the town of Union City, Michigan honors the noble bottom feeder, the carp, with a fish rodeo. Yeah. Officers working security at the festival found a man lying in the middle of a street. The officer and his partner went up to the man to help him up, and that's when the toasted tuna came too. He saw the badges and bolted right into the side of a parked car, knocking himself out cold, once again in the street. The officers started towards him to help him again, but just as they reached for him, the pickled perch comes to and bolts off again.
Seems like that catfish had 9 lives there.
Right,
Yeah.
definitely. But this time, the tipsy trout jumps into a pickup truck and was still trying to get the keys into the ignition when the officers finally netted it.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah, he might have gotten away if it had been his truck, but it turned out that he lived 500 miles away and had come to the festival on a riverboat.
And they probably sent him right back up the river, didn't they, Daniel?
You betcha.
You betcha, without a paddle and a hole in his canoe.
Approached by an Iowa officer for questioning in a recent robbery, this powder tough panicked and took off.
However, in an effort to dig the cocaine out of his pockets, our dashing dodo inadvertently undid his pants and bit the proverbial dust himself.
The Davenport Dick pulled him up by his belt loops and put a lid on this dust panhandler. A plainclothes department store security guard was taking a break in front of the store one afternoon when a woman walked over and started telling the guard all about her life. Then she said, "Oh, if you're planning on shoplifting here, don't. They busted me, and I've still got a warrant out on that one. She proceeded to say that she'd been having a rough week. So a friend gave her some money to buy herself something and some heroin to cheer her up, which she pulled out and showed to the speechless guard. Then she says, "You know, my boyfriend says I talk too much." And turned and entered the store. The guard followed, then ditched the woman to call the police. When they arrived, the guard told the police which dressing room to find the woman in, and they quickly arrested her for the warrant and drug possession. As they brought her by the security guard, the yakety woman said, "Oh, did they arrest you too, honey?" To which the guard flashed her badge and said, "No, and your boyfriend's right. You do talk too much."
After the break, a hunchback doesn't make it to the bell tower. A man takes a stranger's car for a test drive. A thief borrows a few things for court.
Is that your jacket?
Sure.
It is your jacket, okay.
A casual crook makes a fashion faux pas. All this and more coming up on America's Dumbest Criminals.
You have the right to remain seated.
What you wear says a lot about the kind of person that you are. However, as in this case, it can sometimes say a bit more than you'd like. Our sticky-fingered felon found his way into an apartment and did his best to clear out all of those troublesome personal items that so many of us carelessly leave in our homes while we're off trying to make an honest living. Luckily, a couple of witnesses were able to identify the man in a lineup. He showed up at his arraignment sporting a fancy leather jacket on his arm and a smug smile on his face. But the grin quickly turned upside down when the attorney pointed out that the clothing crook's new jacket had the victim's initials plainly printed inside. Now his wardrobe makes a more accurate statement about the kind of person he really is, a prisoner. Your wedding is supposed to be one of the most joyous days of your life. However, this crooked couple ran into a few obstacles on their way down the aisle. It seems that Ned and Spacey in Allegheny, Tennessee, decided that they'd make a trip down to the courthouse so that they could get hitched. They passed a couple of large signs warning that everyone entering is subject to a search and proceeded happily towards the security station. They had more important things on their mind than worrying about being searched or what the police might find. However, after the security officer opened Ned's backpack, he discovered a large amount of pot, nicely packaged in small bags, obviously ready for sale. Well, the bride was definitely blushing as they cuffed her doomed groom and escorted him off to the special honeymoon suite down at the jail. It has a heart-shaped bunk. A retired lieutenant of the New Orleans Police Department sent us this story about 2 bullets and 1 blank. The lieutenant and his partner had stopped a suspicious man walking down the street. The man seemed intoxicated, so the officers decided to pat him down for any weapons. Sure enough, they discovered a crude Saturday night special with a bullet lodged in the barrel.
What the hell were you thinking?
Well, I figured next time I shoot it, it'll come out.
Really now?
Wouldn't it?
Like blow up in your face?
Nah, it would have come out when I shot it again.
Despite repeated attempts, the officers just couldn't convince the fool that had he fired the gun with the bullet still stuck in the barrel, it would have exploded in his hand. Fortunately, his future Saturday night specials will only involve getting to his bunk before the bars close on his cell. Security officers at a Kmart in Michigan noticed a suspicious-looking character near the electronics division and watched as he suddenly developed a rather unusual growth on his back. They apprehended him at the exit and removed his coat so that they could diagnose his condition. Fortunately, the unsightly growth turned out to be just a benign VCR, which was easily removed so that the patient could recover fully back at the prison bell tower.
You have the right to remain seated.
You know that old cliche, into each life a little rain must fall? Well, it's true. And in some lives, it pours. An officer was serving an arrest warrant on a fugitive and left his civilian ride-along in the car. The woman who answered the door said that the man he was looking for wasn't home. When the officer returned to his car, his ride-along told him that while he was talking to the woman at the front door, a man had crawled out of the window at the end of the house and was still laying there underneath it in the rain.
Hey, you! What are you doing down there?
I'm resting.
Resting? Yeah, I'm resting. Who are you? What's your name? Stand up.
Noah. You want to get in my ark?
Yeah. Turn around
right.
again.
Foiling a crime in progress is usually a welcome act of bravery. However, heroic citizens should really make sure there is a crime in progress. In Janesville, Wisconsin, an older man saw a guy leave his car running and quickly enter a gas station. The older man, who later admitted that he had been drinking, entered the gas station and claims that he thought it was being robbed. Acting quickly, he went back outside and tried to drive away in the other guy's car. Almost heroic, except for one small detail. The other man wasn't robbing the gas station. He was a regular customer who was buying donuts. The drunken vigilante made it about 50 yards before he fell out of the car, which then ran into a utility pole. The thick-headed thief was then arrested on suspicion of stealing a car and has most likely ruined any chance he had of getting a job as a valet parker. Our next real surveillance tape from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, shows one of the most lethargic and unprepared criminals I've seen in a long time. He entered the highly monitored convenience store as if he had just woken up from a nap, which would explain his weapon, a salad fork, and his wardrobe, a jersey with his name printed plainly across the back. Yeah, give me all the money. I've got a fork, so don't make me use this fork. It didn't take police long to locate the labeled loser and put him in a place where he can hopefully catch up on his sleep in a nice, quiet jail cell. Thanks for watching. Join us next week as we continue to highlight the lawfully challenged losers here on America's Dumbest Criminals.
On the next episode of America's Dumbest Criminals, a boatload of bozos toss more than their cookies in this high-speed chase. A spaced-out suspect picks the wrong day to film home movies. A masked moron hitches the wrong ride home.
Would you step on out of the car there, pal?
A mugger makes the moves on the wrong couple. The laughs just keep coming on the next episode of America's Dumbest Criminals.
My partner and I one night brought in a couple guys for no big deal. I mean, it wasn't anything super spectacular. Took them downstairs in our booking area and had them sit on a bench, and my partner sat at the desk and started filling out the paperwork. And I told the first guy, I said, I want you to stand up and I want you to empty all your pockets up on the desk, put it up here nice and neat. So as he's putting stuff up there, he puts a little sandwich baggie down. I picked it up and looked at it, and it's some marijuana, okay? Now, it's stems and seeds and tree bark. I mean, to get anything out of this, you'd have had a bonfire, and I don't even know if that would have worked. I didn't want to be bothered with it. My partner looks at me, and he's giving me the eye. So I turned to the guy, and I said, this isn't yours, is it? I said, because if it's yours, then I got to do something about it. Then I have to take appropriate measures and go through this. I said, now, if you tell me it's not yours, I throw it away, and we get on with what we got to do here. I said, now, this isn't yours, is it? And his buddy has picked up on this. His buddy's sitting there going, and I look at the guy and I said, this isn't yours. He goes, yeah, it's mine. His buddy's eyes are rolling up in his head. I said, no, let me explain this again. If this is not yours and you tell me it's not yours, I throw it away. But if it's yours, I got to arrest you. I got to add charges here. I said, now, this isn't yours, is it? He looks at me, and he looks at my partner, and he looks at his buddy, and he turns back to me and he goes, yeah, you got me. His buddy's dying now, okay? His buddy is like, come on. My partner stands up. He says, let me help you here. Look at me. He says, next time the officer asks you that question, I want you to look him straight in the eye and say, no, officer, that's not mine. He says, can you do that? Guy says, yeah, I can do that. So I said, okay, now, this isn't yours, is it? And he looks at me and he looks at my partner. My partner goes, he says, no, officer, it's not mine. I said, good, and his buddy died. It was like, thank you.